They say Genghis Khan's blood runs through the veins of millions, his legacy carved into the bones of history like scars on an ancient battlefield. What they don't say, what they couldn't know, is that history left something out, or rather, someone. I've walked the breadth of time, from the primordial fires of Earth's birth to the neon-lit skies of a future no one would believe. Those skies were alive with sprawling cities suspended mid-air, their lights dancing in hues humanity hasn't yet imagined. It was a world teeming with possibilities, and yet it felt as distant from the raw, brutal world of Genghis Khan as a dream is from waking. But few moments have held the gravity, the pure and daunting responsibility of the year 1227, the year of Genghis Khan's death. The Mongol Empire was at its peak, a storm sweeping across Asia, swallowing everything in its path. Genghis Khan's death was a closely guarded secret at first, his generals ensuring the stability of the empire, while his body was quietly returned to the sacred Burkhan Khaldun. But my mission wasn't to watch the funeral, or marvel at the empire's intricate web of power. I was there for the child. Her name was Borta, a name chosen in honor of the Khan's first wife, though no one would dare say it aloud. The name carried a weight that could topple dynasties, a silent acknowledgement of a bond that transcended politics and war. In a court teeming with rivals and intrigue, even a whisper of her connection to the Khan's heart could have ignited chaos. To those who knew, her name was both a shield and a target, a symbol of her father's hidden tenderness and a threat to the fragile balance of power. She was not a product of conquest, nor the result of some political union. No, Bort was born of love, an anomaly in a life defined by ambition and war. Her mother, a healer from the steppes, had caught Genghis Khan's attention in a rare moment of vulnerability. Their union was brief, but it produced a child who, by rights, should have been as feared and revered as her father. But history has no patience for loose threads. A daughter born out of wedlock, hidden from the courts and the warriors who would see her as a threat, had no place in the grand tapestry of the Mongol Empire. And so, as Genghis Khan lay dying, he summoned one last ounce of strength to issue a command. She must be kept safe. She must survive. This is where I come in. I'd like to tell you I had a plan, that I entered the Mongol camp with all the cunning and certainty of a seasoned time traveler. But the truth is, stepping into the past is never clean. You're an intruder, a ghost in someone else's story. I arrived on the fringes of the camp, dressed as a wandering trader, my saddlebags filled with trinkets and spices that didn't yet exist. It wasn't long before I was summoned by a weary-looking man whose eyes betrayed the weight of his secrets. Subede, the great general, had been entrusted with the task of ensuring Bort's safety, and he'd decided I was his best option. "You will take her far from here," he said, his voice a low growl, "to a place where no one will find her. Not the sons, not the Khans. She must live, stranger, for his sake." Bort was barely 5, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity as I lifted her onto my horse. She clung to a small wooden figure, a crude carving of a bird that her father had given her. I'd like to think it brought her comfort, though she said little as we rode. The journey was perilous, a labyrinth of shifting alliances, treacherous terrain, and the ever-present shadow of discovery. We traveled under the cover of darkness, avoiding the well-trodden paths where Mongol scouts might linger. Borta was a quick learner, though, and by the time we reached the mountains of Tibet, she could speak enough of my language to ask questions. "Who are you?" she asked one night as we camped beneath a canopy of stars, Why are you helping me? What could I say? That I was a traveler from a future she couldn't fathom. That her survival was a thread I'd been sent to preserve in the fragile tapestry of time. I settled for something simpler. I'm someone who believes you deserve a chance, I said. Your father wanted that for you too. Over the years, Bort grew into a woman of quiet strength and boundless compassion. I stayed with her as long as I dared, helping her establish a life far from the shadow of her father's empire. She became a healer like her mother, traveling from village to village, leaving behind a legacy of kindness in a world that desperately needed it. We settled in a valley, untouched by Mongol expansion, its rivers clear and shimmering under the sun, their gentle currents weaving through the landscape like silver threads. The forests were alive with the rustling of leaves, the calls of birds echoing through the trees, and the occasional sight of deer grazing in the meadows. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of pine, mingled with the sweetness of wildflowers, and each dawn painted the valley in hues of amber and rose, a serene haven, far removed from the chaos of the empire. The villagers there came to revere her, not as the daughter of a conqueror, but as a beacon of hope. When drought struck one summer, she led efforts to ration food and find new water sources, saving the community from starvation. When bandits came seeking to pillage, it was her words, not weapons, that convinced them to leave in peace. Borta's influence rippled outward, inspiring neighboring settlements to form alliances and share resources. These acts of quiet heroism defined her far more than the shadow of her lineage ever could. I often wondered how much of her father's spirit lived within her. Her resolve in the face of adversity mirrored his unyielding determination on the battlefield, though her battles were fought with words and kindness. Just as Genghis Khan had unified warring tribes under a single banner, she brought disparate communities together through alliances forged in trust and cooperation. Her ability to inspire loyalty and courage in others, even amidst overwhelming odds, seemed to echo the charisma that had once made her father a legend. In her own quiet way, she carried forward his legacy, not of conquest, but of forging unity and strength where none had existed before. Genghis Khan's legacy was one of conquest and domination, yet his daughter's legacy was one of healing and unity. Perhaps it was the duality of human nature, the capacity for both destruction and creation, that made her story so compelling. She taught me that even the smallest actions could alter the course of history in ways no one might ever see. As she grew older, the wooden bird her father had carved became a symbol for her, a reminder of where she came from and the fragile hope she carried forward. She would hold it in her hands during moments of doubt, its smooth surface worn from years of touch. Even a bird must find its own sky, she once said to me. My father may have ruled the land, but I'd rather help it heal. The day I left her was one of the hardest of my many lifetimes. We stood at the edge of the valley, the rising sun painting the landscape in hues of gold. She thanked me for everything, though it was I who owed her gratitude. Without her, my understanding of the past and of humanity itself would have remained incomplete. History doesn't remember her. There are no records, no monuments, no songs to sing her name. Such erasure is all too common, especially for those who work quietly in the shadows, their deeds eclipsed by louder, more visible figures. It is a reminder of how fragile the threads of memory can be, and how often the most profound legacies are those left unsung. But I remember. I remember the lives she saved, the hope she inspired, and the burden she carried with such grace. And I remember the moment I left her, knowing that my presence could jeopardize the very future I'd fought to protect. I've seen empires rise and fall, witnessed the birth and death of stars, but few things have moved me like the quiet courage of a forgotten child. Bort was more than her father's daughter. She was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are sparks of light, and that sometimes the greatest legacies are the ones no one knows about. This is my confession, not of guilt, but of privilege. The privilege of bearing witness to a story that history left behind. And as I sit here, recounting this tale to you, I can't help but wonder, how many other stories have we forgotten? How many other sparks of light have gone unseen? Perhaps it is our duty, as travelers and witnesses, to carry these stories forward, to remind the world that even the smallest lives can leave the deepest marks on the fabric of time.